Clear to engage. Time on target. 5 mics. Out.
Reagan is a shill for his boss. Just horrible. I get so upset about it sometimes.
Brilliant job security.
You know, people shill for their wife. I'm just saying.
Don't you have a job? Do a job.
I'm trying to teach Brian. I'm trying to teach him how to do it right.
Yeah. I had one on. I had House Republicans.
Yes, the 2022 House Republican hat.
Old school. Hopefully not the last time the winning cycle. So I'm hoping
Here's the problem though, and we have to start with 2025 elections.
Yeah, totally.
Obviously. I text my dad and I was like, because usually on every election night we'll like text each other the most interesting stories that we find, like not the top line stuff that everybody's talking about, but like the stories nobody hears about. And I was like, any good news? He's like, nope. Couldn't find any.
Brutal.
I think it was not good for us. There's no doubt. I think Virginia, Virginia's a lot like Oregon. I was kind of hoping we would have done a little better in Oregon or if we would have done a little better in Virginia. I mean, New Jersey, I didn't think he really had much of a shot. I mean, there's been some blips over the years. In 21, right? We had obviously a great Virginia and a pretty decent New Jersey, on the heels of the Biden victory. So you got to assume that Democrats are going to do better, right? But the biggest thing to me was the 13 legislative seats that Virginia lost. I mean, they took a walloping. So the governor stuff would make sense because it's very nationalistic for those two, but for the state's House seats, the House of Commons in Virginia to just take it in the shorts, like bigger than anything, was really bad. And they were all like 55-45 kind of seats. It was pretty brutal.
Well, and the difference there was they held a bunch. They were doing a great job. They had a bunch of seats that were Harris seats that Harris still won, despite the fact that the margin closed in Virginia between Trump and Harris. There was a bunch of legislators that they had elected in the previous run that were holding Harris seats. And like same thing here, where in order to be anywhere close to the majority, we have to hold a bunch of seats that the Democratic presidential nominee wins, right? And so in that situation, and this year, there's no coattails, there was nothing motivating. There was no school board issue in Virginia. There just wasn't anything to work with. The government is shut down, which is obviously problematic in Virginia with a lot of government employees. And I think a lot of those folks are probably going to blame the Republicans for that shutdown, right? So you had a combination of things working against the Republicans. But I do think like one of the main things is most of the normal Democratic candidates, putting Momdami aside in New York, and even Momdami, they all did focus on affordability of life. And the Republicans, I think, got trapped into running a lot of the ads on some of the side issues that Trump did really well against Harris with. But those aren't going to be issue. If we run campaigns on trans, despite there being a ballot measure in Oregon, I do not think that we're going to pick up seats doing just that. It can be part of a holistic strategy, but that strategy has to start with transparent government and dealing with corruption in Salem, and then affordability, or flip those, right? And then dealing with some of these side issues where we do have a majority, but maybe it's not driving people to mail their ballot in.
What does our national committee man think? Dan Mason joined us, by the way. Hi, Dan.
With you guys, despite the losses on the East Coast. But I mean, at the end of the day, blue states weren't going to probably flip dramatically in this climate. And I think that's, cycle-wise, that probably wasn't going to happen. I think the government shutdown definitely impacted it. You had a lot of people that were teed off and motivated to vote against Republicans in a big government city area. I mean, Northern Virginia stacked with federal government employees. And like what Reagan just said, there was no big issue that was galvanizing Republicans to turn out. And they've said, the political experts have said, when Trump's not on the ballot, you have a rough turnout for Republicans across the board. And that's the thing that's going to be challenging to navigate next year in a lot of these swing districts, these swing states, or competitive, governor races. Obviously, Oregon's going to be an interesting situation. We're all hopeful because you get the least popular governor in the country. You'd think that, some Democrats would side with, Republicans and independents to vote her out. But yeah, I mean, I think the politicos were probably not surprised by any of those results, except for the Commons in Virginia, where they lost a lot of legislative seats. But outside of that, everything worked against Republicans in those races. The other thing is New Jersey, that governor candidate, supposedly was going to be way more competitive than he was 4 years ago, and he barely lost, and he got smoked. And that's one of those that is a consistent theme that comes up in a lot of these races where they try to run again for the same seat and they do worse. And obviously, we're looking at some situations on the West Coast where that may happen. And there is no recent example of a sequel benefiting a Republican in that.
Yep.
It really
I totally
does.
agree.
Yeah, it really
And
does.
think about this too. I mean, this isn't an exact comparison, but something to set a baseline for, okay, is second term, and I understand there's a break in between Trump's terms, so there could be something different that plays out. But the second term, I just went back to 1986. So the Republicans in 1986. So this is the second Ronald Reagan midterm. He had been elected in 84 by wide margins. I believe that did come with some coattails. Okay, 1986, they lost 8 U.S. Senate seats for the Republicans, and they lost 5 House seats. And so the Dems hit 258, which is a crazy number in the House of Representatives. So like second term, like your baseline for a second term midterm of the incumbent president it's not normally a really good year for the M party, right? And so you have to make some assumptions. Now, I think that there's some things that can be done to help make it so that that is not the thing that always happens, but that's like the baseline. That's normal. Okay, Obama got hit pretty hard in 2014 as well in his second midterm, right? Bush got smoked in '06. Like your second term presidency, you've had a lot of control with the one political party, and so it's kind of normal for voters to go, maybe I'm going to go a different direction. If we can improve the economy in the ensuing like year-ish, I think that could put us in a lot better space, which is why Trump did an address on the economy. But right now, I think it's good for these things to happen so that the R's wake up and we start trying to get our stuff together and we have time to do it.
But I think to Dan's point, when you talked about how Trump wasn't on the ballot, I think he intentionally
Was.
stayed away from weighing into this until kind of the very end. And he really only weighed in, he said Chiardelli or whatever that guy's name in New Jersey was fine. He didn't really seem to care for Winsome Sears because she does not like President Trump. So he was probably
Right.
like, screw her. And then he kind of weighed in a little bit in the New York City stuff kind of right at the end too. So it just goes, I think they all kind of knew it was going to go bad for Republicans. So he just kind of stayed out of the way. But we're gonna have to learn how to win. I think it was Megyn Kelly. I was listening to her yesterday when I was putting up Christmas lights, and she was pretty fired up. And I don't know if it was her or somebody else, but they said we got to figure out how to win without Trump as Republicans. Like I mean, we're gonna have to figure it out because he can't run again for president. So if we don't figure it out, I mean, we're gonna have a problem. And his voters show up for Trump. They come out of the rural backwoods and they vote for Trump, but it seems like they don't show up otherwise. And I'm hoping this is a wake-up call for the National Republican Party to realize that we got to kind of start doing some more outreach instead of just the Trump voters. We got to figure out how to get maybe some of those soccer moms back on the team, some of those suburbs. Because when I was looking at the Virginia races, like those were mostly all suburban races that we just got walloped in. And you can't say they were government workers because it was like Virginia Beach and some of those
It's
areas,
true.
so we just got beat up hard. And so we're gonna have to figure it out. And we got 364 days to get it done.
Yep.
So what do you
But
think
I
this
think
means
that
for
that's
Oregon?
also Well, I also said, well, just to piggyback that one point, I think that's also why you hear them talking about a potential convention this summer. Going into the midterms,
Hmm.
I think that they're trying to reset, and we can't do things in a traditional way. And you can broadcast that Trump is on the ballot in the sense of he is a two-term president if the Democrats get control, because they're gonna stack things up with impeachment hearings, and I mean for 2 years the agenda's toast, and I think that's the conversation at the RNC meetings that I go to, and the constant discussion is we need to um, get out the vote, protect the ballot, um, but we need to we got to set a different tone with the midterms, because like you pointed out, I think between the last 40-50 years, the party in power only picks up seats in what, two of those cycles out of like
Hmm.
40, or I don't know what the exact numbers are, but it's obviously one of those was after 9/11. Now,
Right.
national events, as we see, can change, especially in the Trump land, by the week. The news cycles are so different. And so I think a year from now, we could be talking about a variety of different stories. I mean, I don't think your average Politico would never have said a year ago, oh, Trump's going to win the popular vote. Like 99% of the politicals
Correct.
were like, okay, he might win the election, but he's not going to win the popular vote. So the fact that he was able to do that, win all the swing states, I mean, he beat the spread in a way that nobody saw a year ago going into that election night. So my hope, obviously, is that we have a beautiful change for a midterm. Otherwise, Speaker Jeffries, say that one a couple of times. That's going to be a freaking terrible thing to digest for any sanely Republican in the U.S.
Of course, the sombrero memes could be fun, but
But here's the thing too, it's like if Democrats pick up the House too, then we have something to run against. That's the problem with having full control of the government is you don't have anything to run against. You got to run on your record. And right now the record is struggling a little bit, mostly because all we were able to do was reconciliation. And then we haven't been able to do the budget, and then the Democrats have shut down the government. So there isn't a ton. There's a ton in the executive order front, but those have limits in their power, which is why reconciliation was so important and why it's good that it passed, because there's some critical stuff that needed to happen in there, but that's not everything. And so we got to figure out a way to get back to passing legislation. And, we'll see what happens if they make a change in the filibuster or not. But I think that could be, I mean, it'll be interesting to see if they do that or not.
I mean that Mitch McConnell said that this would be the worst thing you ever did if you changed that filibuster. And I mean, I think there's a reason why we have 60. I think the problem now is it's who yells uncle when the government shut down, right? The Republicans think I think it's going to eventually go to blame the Republicans if we don't get it open soon. I think we
Yeah.
won for a while, but eventually people say, well, you're in charge. And that's easier for people to understand versus the nuanced Democrat version of a clean CR. People are like, what the hell's a clean CR? I don't even know, and it's like, it's not that clean. It's 28 pages long. So can't be that clean. And I just think at some point they got to negotiate something to open the government, and then we can get back to pounding the Democrats. But I think somebody's got to, and it shouldn't be the leaders. I'm hoping maybe like, they get like the Gang of Eight or somebody to go around and come up with something that they do around that just to open the government back up again. And then that gives us another 6-8 weeks or something to try to figure out a budget. Cause I think that's really what we have to do is figure out the budget stuff. And cause otherwise, what's going to happen is go now fast forward to Oregon. All that the Democrats will do is just blame Trump. And they're going to blame every problem, every single thing you can think of on Trump and Republicans. And so by extension, how do you as a legislative candidate in poor old tiny Happy Valley, Oregon, how do you run against that? What sort of stick do we carry at all to run against something like that message? It's very difficult. So we have to figure it out. I love the idea of like a mid-summer RNC convention. I think the Oregon Republicans should do something along those lines and have like a big thing, not just another, Dorchester. Like, no, let's do like a full-on thing, but make it more kind of like most like a Reagan dinner with a little, so it's all kind of pizzazz with a little bit of work, right? So
Mhm.
I think that'd be fun.
What I will say, part of the Reagan dinner evolution over these 11 years of doing it was, I went to CPAC, I went to the national conventions, and, you try to, first of all, you try to brand out of that. And you have an experience for donors, grassroots, political people that is very unique. But you're also, we had in the room on Saturday night, featuring U.S. Senator Mark Wayne Mullen. We had multiple, big name personalities. Now they were rumored to potentially still be running for governor, but they were celebrity type people. Chris Dudley, Chael Sonnen, former UFC. You've got to have draws to touch additional voters throughout Oregon. And so we had Coin covering it, KGW, Willamette Week, OPB was asking about it. So you do have to have events that you are comfortable showcasing your brand so you can touch a lot of these different voters. We try to do that one night a year, but obviously we need to be able to do more of that. But I mean, and then you've got to spend money on staging, lighting, the visuals. You've got to do something than a static podium, because people are seeing, your brand in a lot of different ways. We also had a lot of social media people in the room covering it. I know David Medina was doing some, and Taryn Dar. There was a lot of folks also taking our message to thousands of other Oregonians as well. So, looking at that, I absolutely agree. We should do something addition in Oregon. And you just got to create new opportunities for visibility. And that's one of my jobs as I've taken, with the national committee man position is trying like, how can I do that, with limited resources and people, have always doing a certain thing, politically in Oregon. And you have to, but if you do the same thing, obviously you're going to continue to fail or at least have results that fail. And so looking for those opportunities to touch different voters that never hear, um, the Republican message. And frankly, some of our meetings are boring. I hate to say it. I mean, they're terrible. I mean, you don't want to bring a bunch of
Some.
these folks to, some of your county party meetings. Are you kidding me? Now, those are obviously governmental business meetings, and that's a whole nother beast. But you have to do things that inspire people, that move them. If you
Yeah.
emotionally move them, you will physically move them into action. But you've got to do something that's different and unique. And otherwise, you take your great people, you dump them into some of these terrible, boring county meetings. They're depressed. They're like, oh, that's why our state's so screwed up. And then they go. They're done. So that's a whole nother tangent I could go on.
No, I like where you're going with it because I think you're right. And I think next year is the way to do something because we're going to see a lot of national figures probably trying to play out what their presidential speech is going to look like, right? If they try to run for president,
Yeah.
an open, we're going to have an open presidential race. I mean, I think JD Vance clearly has the lead in that, but people are going to try to challenge that on some level. So they look for places to come kind of maybe work out some messaging or kind of, work out what their pitch is to to the American out there to say, hey, this is who I am. This is why I'm running for president on the Republican ticket and why I think it's a good opportunity for us to give people that platform to talk to Oregon Republicans, even though we don't normally play in that stage, but we can play in that stage from a standpoint of people could come if they know there's a decent amount of Republicans in the room. And I just think it's a great opportunity for us. And like you said, I agree. Like hearing our message that we're not taking bags of cash like Shamia Fagan. We're not, the party of all the non-government organizations that are all just nothing but left-wing Democrats taking taxpayer dollars and then turning around and giving that money to, political contributions and on all those sort of things and just say, we want to run the government. We want a job-friendly Oregon. We want a business-friendly Oregon. We want railroads, not just more traffic, and we don't want TriMet because it sucks. Oh wait, that might be just my issue. But yeah, I think it's a good opportunity to mention that. And you're right because most people's exposure is to some local party, right, that hosts something, and then they're just kind of those are pretty boring meetings, but they're not intended to be enthusiastic, emotion grabbing. They're, hey, let's have the county commissioner talk about what's going on with the dump and things like that. So that's what they're meant to be is to inform. So
Well, and that's where, I don't know that we have the bandwidth yet to have multiple, Reagan dinner level production events because you do, there's a lot of production that goes into that. But, the last 5 years before Saturday night, we've had a former or a future Trump cabinet secretary speak to us. Well, that was Kristi Noem, Pence, Pompeo, obviously, Lori Chavez Dreamer. Last year we had Ryan Zinke and Lori Chavez Dreamer, so we had two. But bringing in national figures is part of how you galvanize your local voter base. And because we're so far away from Washington, D.C., because we're not a swing state, we're not a purple state, we're not a Republican state with a massive donor base, it gets really tough and tricky to you put situations together that attracts them to want to come to Oregon. But it's important that we do it because it's completely necessary, especially as you, like I said, people are focused on the national politico aspect versus, your local, where before what used to be, you focus local and then national. That's not how people are voting now.
No.
Whether that was the Trump effect or something, back in the Obama days. But I mean, I felt that flip, in the last 10, 15 years. I'm sure you guys have. And so how do you bring national people to gather attention and then and then it's our job, as local Oregonians to keep it and focus on the issues that are really impacting us. So we can push back against the Democrat majority, the most unpopular governor in the country, who's not likable. She's not articulate. She doesn't even build great relationships. She's the perfect, she's an absolute perfect villain to be toppled as an incumbent. And I think that's where a lot of people are, well, hell, incumbency, that's the real powerful thing. In the open seat races, I think going forward, the Democrats are going to have way better candidates than Tina Kotek, or potential candidates. And this is the time to actually, pick her off because of her unpopularity. And, I think the more she takes on Trump in the media, she reminds people of how unpopular and unlikable that she really is. I mean, Trump could actually help us in that respect because she's constantly on TV. Where before she was hidden, people were like, "Oh yeah, Tina Kotek," and then you're like, "Gosh, she is just not likable." And I forget how many things she's done to mess up Oregonians' lives.
Problem is that her approvals actually go up when she fights Trump. That's the thing, is just like her approval ratings have been on the rise as she's been fighting Trump. So that's the sort of, it's like I see your point, but then I'm also struggling
Probably.
because her numbers are on the way up at the same time. Mostly among Democrats, I think her standing is improving, but this is still a majority Democrat state too. So you kind of need Democrats to not be huge fans. I do want to move on real quick to
Just want
some
them to stay home,
local.
Reagan. Just stay home, Democrats. No reason to vote. Nothing to see here.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they control the whole state. There's nothing,
Well,
nothing.
and just to put a real touch on what Dan said, and then I'll let you transition, Reagan. But like Phil Scott is the most likable governor in America. He's a Republican in Vermont. Go figure that.
But he also has to govern like a Democrat in a lot of ways.
I
That's the
understand.
trade-off you get. And I think that's a fair trade-off. I think that's an acceptable trade-off for me. I think there's too many folks in our base who aren't willing to make that trade-off, and so that's unfortunately what you end up getting is you end up getting, well, then you get far left Democrats instead of more moderate Republicans or something like that. That's the challenge.
True.
So, and then we'll watch. I'll put it in the show notes. There's a article from the Oregon Journalism Project because this looks like they interviewed Dudley while he was there at the Reagan dinner, maybe before or after. And he said some interesting things. So, one thing that Dudley said that caught many people's eye is he said he's pro-choice, which I can't remember. I think that was known in 2010, but I think maybe not everybody was aware of that. So I did want to point that out. The much more concerning thing is that he's a fan of Chauncey Billups, which I have a lot of concern about. I know he wants to be supportive of the franchise, obviously, but there's a lot of indications Chauncey wasn't necessarily like the ideal leadership for that franchise before he was arrested for gambling. So we'll have to see. We'll see. We'll see what happens on that front. I'm still interested in to see what Dudley's plan is and what he's planning to do. Basically, it seems like he said he's not ruling out running for governor, but he didn't announce either. Neither did Sonnen. I kind of don't think Sonnen will. But I don't know. Dan, did you get a different impression?
How to answer this question? Um, I mean, yeah, I
Just
100% got
just
this.
answer with what he said publicly. Maybe you have lots of top secret information. You don't have to expose all that
So,
here.
I wouldn't want to do, but I do think that I don't think anybody in that room walked out of away from Chris Dudley's speech and said that is somebody who's not looking to run. And I
Yeah.
think that was the overwhelming sentiment.
Hmm.
Uh, and I think that, I think he's the type of person that wants to see Oregon do better. The Portland Trailblazers are going to leave Oregon if you don't have a better business climate.
Correct.
I mean, who's spending? You got to have people that spend money on suites. You got to have people spending money on high-end courtside tickets, 100 level tickets. Like you have to have, and those are typically businesses that are courting, their clients. You have to have an aggressive business environment in Portland, or that those guys are gone.
This is
Now,
what I said from the beginning, Portland Diamond Project, because they were coming to the legislature, and I said I'm super supportive of baseball in Portland. Until that city isn't a complete disaster, no franchise is going to go there. I don't care that the media market is larger. I don't care about any of this other stuff until the city is a functional city that cares about making sure it's not dirty and there isn't crime. There isn't a franchise that's going to move there. And you're totally right. I do believe the Trailblazers will leave if they have a better option. And I think that there's a pretty good chance they'll get a better option at some point, which is why I'm glad that Dudley and others are trying to look out and sound the alarm on that front. But what really needs to happen is Portland just needs to get itself together.
when you're on the West Coast, there's shipping opportunities to Asia if you had the right manufacturing and business opportunities that were coming here. Deep sea ports, you get the coast, you get the mountains, you got all these different things that can attract a lot of different companies here, except for the actual, government legislative environment. And that's why they're not coming here. So I think you have to change that. Going back to Chris Dudley, I think he's if you had just a simple basic concept of, I'm a former Portland Trailblazer and running to keep, the Portland Trailblazers in Oregon and Portland and creating the environment in which they stay, the economic aspects of it, the public safety, you got to have people also be feeling safe about going in downtown Portland at night for dinner. I mean, you don't have that right now. I know that they'll show great videos of, everything downtown Portland, is perfectly rosy. There's reputational damage for people who live in the suburbs and don't want to go downtown Portland to hit a restaurant. That's why those great restaurants are closing. Your best favorite restaurants are closing because they don't pencil out. They don't have enough business. They don't have enough people walking down there. So you have to change, from the public safety aspect to the businesses wanting to be downtown. You gotta, I know they've tried to clean up the zombie apocalypse of drugged out homeless people all over the streets in downtown. But I mean, you still got to do better to have people feeling like, yes, everywhere in the Portland Metro, we're going to go hang out in downtown because it's beautiful again. And that's a long time, but it starts with the business environment and the public safety, with the governor who's actually cares about that area. I mean, I don't think our current governor demonstrates any type of actions that she believes that she has the control over doing something. Yeah, going on the ice building situation, that was just one thing I brought up with the OPB folks. What they should have done was said, look, you want to protect your building, fantastic. That frees up some of our law enforcement officers. They were not for that. The Portland police have constantly been overwhelmed by the activity at that building, and they were not even reasonably intellectually honest to state that fact. And they were just
Hmm.
wanting to fight Trump, fight Trump, fight Trump. And, so I think that there's opportunities for a governor candidate to, offer true improvement to the residents of Portland and hence impact the entire community in ways that aren't currently being discussed by, frankly, by either side at the moment, but especially on the Democrat side.
Well, and Reagan wasn't there, so he can't talk about the speeches. But
Correct.
because he boycotts his own dinner.
It's terrible. We need to get you back there
It was,
next year.
I would commend you for figuring out time to let all four of those people actually speak, because that's not an easy chore. Given Mark Wayne Mullen, who was great, by the way, and
It was
his
amazing.
his discussing "don't stab each other in the back" was really good. I appreciate what he said about that. Republicans don't don't bag on Republicans, basically, right? We can't win if we're a house divided. And I think it was good, right? I mean, he's good. He's good. He's got a good message. He's a good guy. I think it was fun to have a U.S. senator there. But of course, everybody, it was funny when he got up and said, "Is anybody else in the room not running for governor?" I thought that was kind of funny. So I do find it interesting that we have all of this smoke on the Republican primary side for, to come in second place it seems very difficult to me on a state that is clearly blue, and I still haven't seen a path that shows me that a Republican can win statewide. I think you're unique, what you talked about, that uniqueness that I think Dudley could bring to a conversation about saving Portland through the Trailblazers, through that lens, is uniquely only to him. Like Christine Drazen can't get in there and go solve the Portland Trailblazers problem, right? So she doesn't have that unique attribute on it of any level. So I think that's why a lot of people, when they hear Chris, because he did do really well in Multnomah County in 2010, he's got that cachet, as they say, right? I think that's why people are excited about that opportunity. I just don't know if he's excited about that opportunity. I think that seems to be where I was left. I wish more like, I'm going to tell you on January 1, or like if I was on his team, I probably would have left the people there in that room who are all, I would say the movers and shakers besides Reagan, of our party apparatus in Oregon. I would have gave them something. And if he would have said, and also part of your job is, if you do want to run, you need to dry up Christine's money, and you need to dry up the donor base to freeze them, right? You need to freeze them to stop giving money, because she's done a good job raising a couple of bucks. I think she's over $750,000. So Christine's always been a good fundraiser. So that's never really changed. And I thought he was good. And the thing I'll say about Chael Sonnen, if he would have went first instead of last, his speech would have landed way better. Because I think it was like a rah-rah speech, but except for he basically lambasted political leaders in Salem. When I was looking around, I was like, wow, there's a lot of political leaders in Salem around the room.
That wasn't uncomfortable at all. Yeah. No,
It was a little odd, right? I mean, it was kind of more for the iron workers, where Christine did her announcement speech. Like that would have done better there. But he's got a crisp, clean delivery. And the guy knows how to sell something, right? I mean, he's definitely is interesting. And a couple of the dudes I was sitting around the table with, they were like, man, I don't know. What Chael said was like, hell yeah, what's leadership, right? And all that sort of stuff. And I was like, yeah, but did you hear what he said? Because if you get to the substance, it wasn't there. But hey, like part of it is theatrics, and the guy knows, he understands theatrics, and I'll give him that. And he did it off the cuff.
Oh man, yeah.
Without notes.
I think a lot of people were
notebook or
impressed by.
anything. Yeah. So that was kind of my 2 cents on it. I think the real loser in those ones, and I love her to death, is Danielle Bethel. I think that she, in that space, just it's not really her. It's not really her like lane, like that sort of lane. Danielle in a boardroom, that's like, she's great at that. I've seen her do that in a committee, stuff like that, because she's just wicked smart. But that sort of space is just a little more different. You have to kind of like hit some of those points where people get up and clap. But that's
Hey, Brian, I'll tell you what. I got a ton of positive feedback about her from people who are not politicos that were like, "Wow, I really like that commissioner woman. Like seemed real. She seemed authentic about what she was wanting to do." And so I think
authentic. Yeah.
there's a lot of different audience people in there, and I'm always kind of working the room afterwards, and I talk to a lot of folks afterwards. If you don't work in politics, that her speech was very appealing. A lot of people liked Elmer as well. Representative Elmer followed her, and I think that they were appealing to the non-political personality. Now going back to what you were talking about with Chris and Chael, I think you almost had Dudley kind of doing a test drive to see what the response was. If he wasn't interested in running, I don't think you see him after that after party having conversations with political people the
Yeah,
way he
That's a good
did. He
point.
was there for hours. He would have gotten his car, went home, done. I came and I'm out of here. And he was closing down the building. And there was a lot of people wanting to get photos with him, talk with him, have detailed conversations. Chael Sonnen, I think I heard there were two types of people. People that absolutely loved him. And he's a paid commentator for ESPN for UFC stuff. So
yeah.
you have to be quick-witted, talk in stories on the fly with detail and precision and be interesting and all the different stuff. And so I think you saw that by him watching all of these speeches and kind of categorizing information. Like he was taking it all in. Because I talked to some people at that table. Like he was really absorbing the prior speakers and then went up there and went wild. Now, the people that hated Chael Sonnen were some of and I heard from plenty of them, and like, why are you having somebody like this, close down the night? I got a lot of information and perspective for broad group of people. But those were typically the ones that were around politics for a very long time. A lot of them were female. And they were just like, how dare you have somebody like that shut down the night? Now, we had some logistical changes based on U.S. Senator Markwayne Mullins' preferences to be able to do his talk, do a
Oh,
Q&A, and
sure.
then get on the plane and fly back to Oklahoma because he had done a full day in Oregon from the morning, to at night, meeting with, some trade groups, meeting with some of the tribe folks because of his position on U.S. Senate committees. And so he put in a full day, man. He was revved up, still going, and we're grateful that he, worked the room, did a speech and stuff. So, but because of that, we had to move Chael to the end, and versus a different original lineup. My old lineup got blown up, about a week and a half prior, so we had to add some speakers, move some things around. But overall, I mean, the unanimous opinion was great night, energized Republicans. Even somebody like Nigel, I think, walked out of there, surprised at how the professional
Yeah.
production and frankly the diversity of speakers. Go look at that speaker lineup and all the people that were from their backgrounds, and that's the future of the Republican Party and those type of personalities that most people don't see all in one shot. And I think that was another takeaway that is not always emphasized.
I agree that the diversity is important, and we have to diversity of the speakers, diversity of the topics that we're discussing, because I think that shows the breadth and the wideness of what the Republican Party is today versus the country club Republicans that it was. That I wish we were. I want to be a country club Republican, but
Because you're a golfer,
yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah, I mean, I've always ever just wanted to be a country club Republican. Like that's enough for me. But no, it's good. First, just to end it on that one, and Reagan can chat about it too. But Dan, that was a great. It was a really the production level because I haven't been there in a couple of years, so the production level you definitely upgraded that.
Yeah.
I
Thank you.
think the staging was really good. I thought your backdrop staging was really cool. That was good. I think if you didn't have a video, you were a little bit behind, so you should have had a video. Vicky was pretty upset that Drazen took her walk-up music, but outside of that, it was it was great. I think it was back in black. I
Well,
think you did
yeah,
that
no,
for
I used that walk-up music at Dorchester. I was planning on using it this time, and
yeah, it
um,
was good. Good
I
job. And
read.
I think more of those are better for us as a group in Oregon. And I think exposing people, I mean, like the next one, we should just granted you got to make a living, so you got to charge people to show up. But I mean, putting it on social, like live, would be
Mhm.
pretty huge, or a 10-second delay so you can. Uh,
Well, and hey, Brian, on that point, so we have an agreement with Salem Media Group, and last year they did live stream it and radio broadcasted it. We did not do that this year because it was an election year. And there's some funding aspects that take place, and
Sure.
you got to make sure that you have this stuff funded. And you're raising money, and then you're obviously trying to create a profit for the ORP to help with political infrastructure expenses, which is important. And so, this making the numbers work is always tricky. And then you also have, any dinner, any fundraising event, year over year, you do have inflation. The cost of goods, is up. the economy that's negatively impacting some of our business people, has also hurt, on some of those aspects. And
Yeah,
so
it's true.
when and let's be honest, I mean, there's some people that are freaked out to go to events. Now, there's some of us are very bold,
Right.
like, post Charlie Kirk, man, we're still going. There's a chunk of people that they don't feel safe going to political events, especially Republican ones in the Portland metro. I mean, I hear about it. I mean, they're like, "Hey, love what you do, excited,"
Yeah.
because it is a dangerous political environment. And some of us that operate in the space, we're like, whatever, we'll do whatever. It's not, we'll handle it. And we always have security. We have a big security team. When you have a U.S. senator, you have Capitol Police work with your local state of, Oregon State Police plus Hillsborough Police. Like we always have a very secure environment, but that doesn't take away the fact that people, from what we've seen in the last year, I mean, back to the Trump assassination attempts, people don't feel as safe going to some events as a whole. And so you got a lot of things that you've got to navigate when putting on a big event and bringing in people. And obviously you were there, you felt safe, I'm sure. I mean, the whole place was great. We always do
Well, I
that.
carry a gun, so it's not a problem for me. But and there was a few other people there that had guns. A few of us were. You could tell when somebody's packing a gun, so it's not too hard, too difficult to figure out. But
No, and I know our security people talk about, obviously they're checking concealed carry permits and all that because they know that there's plenty in there. And obviously, if you're an Antifa person trying to do something crazy, that's the worst room to
yeah.
try to walk into. Like I mean, we had this. So in 2019, we hosted Governor Scott Walker, and one of our other speakers was Andy Nome, and he had gotten death threats the night before the Reagan dinner in 2019 that I sent to the Washington County Sheriff that verified it was a legit death threat. They were going to try and take him out at the Reagan dinner before the BLM riots of 2020. And we had it at the Washington Square Embassy Suites. So we had ended up having like a 20-man SWAT team that was there in one of the back rooms. They had about a small, like 5 to 10 person Antifa protest, but I mean, that was a legit issue, and obviously, was being targeted across the board.
Yeah.
And so that was the only real major issue out of the 11 Reagan dinners I've done. That's something significant, but we've taken, the protocol and things have been safe ever since.
Yeah. Hmm.
Makes for a good story, though.
It does. Well, appreciate you reading us into kind of the background of the Reagan dinner because I think it's a fascinating thing. So one of the other things, Brian, I want to move to real quick is a couple of those local election results. So Portland passed their park measure, and then also Lake Oswego by pretty big margin. But there were a couple of these actually that failed. The McMinnville bond, and I love this one especially because it's for recreation center, update park, senior center, library, and it is barely failing, but it is failing.
69 votes, right? Or yeah.
I need to do the math to see if it's changed, but
Yeah, Sandy, yeah, I was looking at some of those like Portland passed a measure. That was kind of a bummer, but they passed that. And then yeah, Lake Oswego, I think they'll pass anything you stick it in front of them because, that white guilt's pretty strong in Lake Oswego. But the public safety fund in Hillsborough passed, and then Sandy's school bond was 26 voted yes, 26% to 74% no. It doesn't sound like Sandy's getting to school anytime soon. And then Westland, Wilsonville barely passed. I thought that was pretty interesting, 52-48. Lane County fire levies all failed. Springfield passed one. The cop levy in Lynn County passed, so I was really surprised. Reagan, that's your hometown, but of course, my good friend Sheriff Michelle Duncan. Of course, people trust her, so
they did a good job. And I think one of the things though that I didn't learn until very late was actually neither of the major parties endorsed that measure, which is not normal. Usually, both of the Republican and Democratic parties come out in favor, and I'm not sure why that didn't happen. If their leadership was just against it, or what. But it's also an increase, and so the margin probably went down on that. Normally, it passes by a wider margin when it's just a renewal, but they wanted to do an increase because they haven't done one in like 8 years,
Yeah.
and the cost, obviously, inflation's been out of control, and so the buying power of that levy, and it's still pretty reasonable amount. There's, I would like to. There's some other things on my property tax statement that I'm like, yeah, we could probably eliminate those. The school bond in Albany that we're still paying is a horrendously large amount.
Oh, really? Oof.
Yeah, it's horrible. But glad to see that that did pass.
Yeah. No, that was the only one. I just helped her out in the initial parts of that. So just to give her kind of some structure. But I tried to tell her that was one of the things I think we said is keep it apolitical as best you can and just say it's what you need.
Hmm.
I think the jail tax, I think they need to do a jail bond at some point there. Maybe
Probably.
jail, but those are a little tougher to build or tougher to pass. But the one that I thought was, and I put it in our notes, Dan, of course, doesn't get to see our notes, but the Rainier gas tax of 3 cents in Rainier, tiny Rainier, Oregon fails 5644. So if you can't pass a tiny little 3 cent local gas tax, I'm pretty sure when the real big gas tax gets on the ballot, that's going to go down in flames. So that's going to be interesting on how that plays out. Have you been following that stuff at all, Dan, with the gas tax stuff?
Yeah, but anybody who's got friends that live outside of Oregon and you hear about what they're paying in like Arizona,
Yeah.
or Texas, or obviously, I mean Arizona's not that far from us, and they're around $2 a gallon. And
Yeah.
so you start having conversations with your other neighbors, going, "Why is Oregon so much higher?" Obviously, California's got a whole nother deal, because I'm shocked when I have to go down there for work events and go, it's insane. Those are all those environmental tax that obviously are not impacting the environment in any substantial way to the average person, and yet it's double. We're paying double what some of these other states are paying per gallon. It's insane. And you want more? You want more? And so I think that's going to get smoked. I mean, if that makes it on the ballot, and that's obviously why there's the delay tactic in signing, right?
And another warning to the city of Albany, who is considering putting a gas tax on the ballot in 2026. I do not know why. It's not going to pass.
It's
It
almost
isn't.
like they do it anyways. Like they know it's going to fail.
I
And they just think if they keep asking, eventually people will say yes. And I've seen that as a
maybe.
strategy, but it's a dumb strategy. And I think the gas tax will hopefully we get the 100,000 signatures, in 34 days, which is not an easy feat of any kind. But it does show you that it'll fail or it'll fail to our favor. The worst part about it is if they get it enough signatures, it freezes the gas tax until you vote on it. So
Hmm.
that would really put a wrench in the plans of Governor Kotek.
Because
So
now they have to go back to layoffs and they probably have to do bigger numbers, which
yeah.
is horrendous. Or they got to tap the emergency fund or something like that. So
Yeah.
that's all of that's really bad. One of the last things I wanted to cover is we have a new state representative designate. So when you get elected to the legislature, but you're not sworn in yet, you're representative elect. When you're appointed, but you haven't been sworn in yet, you're a designate. So senator designate. You're not elect because you hadn't been elected, right? You were chosen by commissioners. So we have a new one, Lamar Wise, and he's taking over for the late Hua Wen, who is in a district that has been pretty competitive in the past. And so I was interested to see the Multnomah commissioners. Three of the Multnomah commissioners, or four of them, got together to vote him through. All the Clackamas commissioners voted for somebody else, Terrence Hayes, based on the reporting that I was reading. But Lamar is interesting because he's the political director for AFSCME. And so I started poking around at him because I thought it was interesting. And there's a lot of interesting stuff out there about him. For instance, the day he got appointed, I went to go look at his Twitter, and his top tweet, so he announced he was running for that appointment. The tweet right below that is this tweet of a GIF of somebody eating popcorn, and it says, "We are long overdue for some Republican infighting. I love this show." And this was July 13th. I don't know what he was talking about. I don't know if he's talking about federal. I don't know if he's talking about state. whatever. But this district has Republican voters in it, so I'm kind of interested in his thoughts on Republican voters in his district that he may face here if he runs for reelection. So I thought that was interesting. He's newer registered to this district, so this is interesting. So what I'm hearing is that maybe he spent some time in this district in the past and either carpetbagged here or carpetbagged to Hillsborough when he tried to get appointed to either of those two. And so the information on that is unclear. But in any event, the joke that I've been making is that the carpetbag company didn't even finish his order yet, that it's not even done. Because of his re-registering. So it looks like maybe he re-registered the address for his PAC like a week after Representative Wynn passed away, which is like, ooh,
Oof.
that's kind of anyway, that's rough. Very, very rough. But unfortunately, the political world, I guess, just keeps turning. Despite it's the human element that often gets lost in this process, which is it can be disappointing, and I think it causes. That's why a lot of people don't really like politics, is because the human element here can often get lost. And then so I tweeted. I just screenshotted the tweet about the Republicans that I mentioned, and we'll link that. So I just said just tweeting this for no particular reason on the day that he got picked, and his Twitter account's gone now. It's been deleted, which is kind of funny. I think I'm gonna take credit for him deleting his Twitter account. Maybe he'll have a new Representative Wise account. Want to start fresh, I'm sure is the only reason for
Now, how
that. But
competitive is that district?
so it was like a point or so, a point and a half in
22
in
in
22.
22 we only when it was an open seat when Wall first ran against Masterman only
Mm,
lost by
okay.
500 votes. Yeah, 500 votes. And it was, I eyeballed that seat from the get-go. I couldn't even get my wife to put money into that seat. I tried. I was like, you guys we got to go here. And then we tried again in 24, and it still was pretty competitive. I mean, John did a pretty good job the second time around with Wah, but she spent $1,400,000. She spent a
Wow.
lot of money to keep it competitive. And it's like that Foster Road, Southeast Portland, out to Damascus. So it's got a lot of rural areas and lot of blue collar. And that Foster Road area has just been decimated by the freaking homeless population. I mean, that was like the epicenter of the shitty RVs parked along the side of the road. And people are just tired of the trash over there. But it's like a plus 12 Democrat district. So that tells you how far it moves our
Wow.
And
way.
And
Yeah.
I know the lines move around, but this district is it was Mike Schaffler's for a long time, and he was a very moderate, some very often conservative Democrat. And then Jeff Reardon, who beat Schaffler in the primary after he took some votes that weren't favorable to Democrats, and then everyone thought Reardon was going to be far left, and then the Overton window moved, and it turns out Reardon was like kind of in the moderate
Yeah.
space now. And then Hua replaced, and there was concern that she was going to drag to the left, but I think mostly the perception is she was pretty moderate, not
She
terribly
was
far
good.
left on those issues. And so now you have somebody who has been kind of a we'll just call it like it is, Democratic foot soldier. And so it'll be interesting to see if he attempts to moderate or stays hard left. I think mainly the main takeaway is Clackamas wanted the person who sounds like he may have been best for the job, and Multnomah is scared of AFSCME. And so they just were like, actually, we're not going to risk it whatsoever. We're just AFSCME, whatever you say, which is usually what gets Democrats into trouble, is just rubber stamping whatever the unions tell them to do with no pushback whatsoever. So it'll be interesting to see. They've taken one of their union bosses and put him right into the legislature. This will be a fascinating experiment to watch play out.
Well, going back to the Virginia race on Tuesday, if you don't have a competitive person at the top, your down ballot people get smoked. And that's the thing. These are the
True.
type of seats that you would win if you have a very competitive governor race at the top that's driving turnout up. And I know that, back in 2010, when you got to a 30-30 split, you had a very competitive race. You picked off a lot of those crazy, 14, 16 point Democrat advantage seats like the Matt Wand when he won in 2010. You picked up seats like that because of a competitive governor race that drove out turnout. And so hopefully Oregon Republicans will pay attention to how important that is to races like this that you're describing.
I think so. And Lamar Wise is not that I mean, sandbagger is a nice term for that. I just think because Wah Win, I mean, she was, I mean, Emily McIntyre was one of her good friends. You
Mhm.
know, I mean, Emily got a lot of crap for even being friends with Wall. She even got, even to the point that Emily went down and when they were doing the quorum for the special session, she went down for Wall so Wall wouldn't have to go on the floor. So it just kind of tells you the type of person she was versus what I think we're getting with Lamar Wise, which is just not. I mean, he can't win an election on his own because he tried, winning those ones before, so he had to sandbag his way in. And I just think it's kind of especially knowing you like moved like literally this summer and stuff, like it's just kind of shitty. I don't know. I just think but I guess that's politics. I mean, it's a dirty business, and you have to know that if you're going to play in it. But I just don't think that he's going to be anything like she was, and hopefully we get a candidate that can smoke him and draw that because this seat is moved, unlike 2010, where we basically gave all of those seats back in 2012. Like we need to hopefully win where we can win and hold, right? Because otherwise, if that happens, I only want that to happen, Dan, in 2030. So then we can redistrict and then we can, actually make these fair, competitive instead of gerrymandered horseshits that, Tina Kotek, who was responsible for that, the gerrymandered maps that we have, we can actually, we got to have one of those two chambers to maybe hold up a map. And at this point,
Mhm.
I would trust Tobias Reed over the legislature in drawing up maps right now. So I would just, if it was up to me, and we were 2031, I would be nope. We're done. We're not going to do the maps. We're going to walk out, and we're just going to let Tobias do it. I trust him more than I trust
100%.
because the unions have control of that, and they don't have control of Tobias. They might, but at least it doesn't appear that way. So,
Yeah, the
I
great irony is if we had something that California just threw out on a redistricting commission that was even relatively, nonpartisan or bipartisan, how much better Oregon would be. I mean, I do think, just as an idea, the ethics commission is made up of three, three, and three. So 9 commissioners, 3 Republicans, 3 Democrats, 3 non-affiliated or independents, two of which appointed by the House minority, two, are appointed by the Senate minority, two by the Senate majority, two by the House majority. Lone pick is the governor's, but you have an even 3-3-3. You had a redistricting commission that was made up like that, you would get a
Mm,
much more fair process. Frankly, all the state commissions should follow that level
totally.
of appointment. And the only reason the ethics commission is set up like that is because of the Kitzhaber scandal. And so, they do adjust when something happens. But that should be the model, especially for redistricting, if we're going to have fair lines, which is apparently the topic. You want to get rid of gerrymandering, have a fair process. But
Are
somebody's got to create that process, and you need that in the most evenly split situation possible. 3, 3, and 3, 9 commissioners. There you go. There's my idea for the day.
I think that is a great idea, and that if we weren't in the current gerrymander off that we're in, I think would be much more palatable to both sides. But unfortunately, we're kind of in a pretty bad era for the gerrymandering related stuff. Still shocked the Dems haven't picked up their pens and at least tried to redistrict out Bents. I am frankly am shocked. But I guess there's a few states who aren't trying. Are you still on the Ethics Commission, Dan, or
I
did
just
you
came off. Yeah,
you just
2 months
rotated
ago.
off? So
Yeah,
you did 2 4-year terms, two
I
3-year
did.
terms.
Yeah, only Republicans,
So,
2 terms.
and you are, congratulations. And you were basically there for, and we don't have time to devolve in the whole thing. We'll have to have you back. But you were basically there for the two biggest scandals in Oregon history, John Kitzhaber and Shemia Fagan. Is that right?
Months. Yeah. Yeah. My
Uh,
first meeting was us looking to vote to move to investigation on the Kitzhaber stuff because the federal case had just ended, and so it moved to
mm,
ethics, and his attorney came in, nicely and made a case on why we should not do that. And I asked one simple question: if he did nothing wrong, why did he resign? And her
oops.
answer was, he cared so much about public policy that he wanted to step away so that good public policy could proceed without being obstructed by, the news.
Mm.
There you go. That was the answer.
Yeah. Yeah, we
We should
definitely
look
need
back and see
we
if that
definitely
was
need to
even a.
come back and talk about some ethics stuff. How much can you talk about? Or do they keep you like do you sign NDAs or
All
anything?
public. No, it's all public information now. I mean, once it
Okay.
goes, you can't talk about it when it's in the investigative process.
Sure.
Right.
But once it's in a public meeting, now, full disclosure, I mean, I was the lone vote against the Shemia Fagan stuff because I didn't think that was even remotely close to reasonable. I mean, they
Yeah.
went to the drawing board and, went into a meeting room and discussed, what a reasonable fee would be. And my principle from the Kid Hopper stuff on was a top official violating ethics laws should pay a top penalty. Very basic. Very straightforward. She was a top official. She should pay a top penalty. Unfortunately, even a top penalty, the max penalty is $5,000. So
Hmm.
under Kids Hopper, it was $50,000 in ethics fines. Sylvia Hayes got 110,000 in ethics fines. Shemia Fagan got 3750. She didn't even hit the 5,000. So I pushed back aggressively, and I was more than comfortable, voting, being the lone vote against when it was that ridiculous and over the top. But that's my humble but
Did
accurate
you pay in
opinion.
cash?
That was part of the issue. I mean, they tried to say that she wasn't using her office. I mean, that it was. I mean, that was yeah. That's a whole another deal. But yeah, I mean, she's making 10
That's so
grand
great.
on the side of her as a consultant.
A month.
And if you go back to her Secretary of State transactions with her PAC, once she took office in early January, she got a PAC donation in February. I brought that up in our ethics meeting,
Hmm.
and the director and I knew that they were going to basically go, well, we can't use that information in the investigative process because the PAC activity is separate from the
Yeah.
actual position per the Oregon Supreme Court ruling on that topic. But I wanted it on the record. I'm like, hey, explain to our group why that isn't. Because you can see that Lamada was paying her, or the owner of Lamada had paid her a $10,000 consultant fee after she'd won office, like what during this window. Like I know that they get political contributions, but she's in that office for 4 years, and a month after she takes it, she gets that, knowing that there was going to be an audit,
Mm.
of there was a specific audit, obviously, they had interest in. And then she was basically operating like a super lobbyist for other states because she connected the lieutenant governor and Lamada, which she only had that relationship because of the role and the position. So anyway, it's a terrible situation and shows
Wild
why we need
story.
more reform.
It's a wild story. Yeah, there some of that stuff is when you really dig into it, it's pretty wild. Like just the brazenness of her, I'm just gonna go and do it like I don't care. The brazenness is what always gets me with the ethics. Like Kitzhopper at least had the decency to realize that he fucked up and he stepped down and took his punishment, right? So she probably still doesn't think she did anything wrong.
Well, we even had one of the ethics commissioners, advocate, that she did not believe that any of this was a violation. I'm not going to point out what commissioner that was because you guys can go back on the public record, look at it. But now I do think overall you need to pay some of these positions more money because you can't have, a governor or a secretary of state making a
Right.
certain amount of money with the staff members, the chief of staff making, $50,000 more than their
Double.
person or double. Yeah. I mean, it's insane. So you do have to have some real structural reform
Yes.
on some of those pay that
Totally.
the legislature doesn't want to handle for the most
And the
part.
only people who don't agree is just the voters of Oregon. Oops. Unfortunately, that's tough. That's the hard part too. It's like we tried. I mean, Lieber and Knope worked together to put that commission thing on the ballot, and it got annihilated. So maybe it's just the structure of it wasn't clear or what. Maybe if you just put a straight pay increase on the ballot, but a lot of people are going to say in the current economy also, it's like a pay increase for politicians I hate? Absolutely not. So like how you do it is like the legislature is either just going to have the courage, it's too bad none of the legislative leaders have the courage to take those votes with their people and make it bipartisan. That's the thing too is again all this stuff is the Democrats are worried about partisan food fights on all these different issues. I said, well, then just come to the table and negotiate. But they don't want to negotiate. I
Yeah.
think that's interesting. So they want to try to go partisan. It's like, well, then we're going to make it a partisan issue. But again, if you bring Republicans to the table, and I'm not saying again, they always are going to go. It's not like we're sending Dwayne Yunker to be our lead negotiator on everything. Okay, there's other people out there that will negotiate. You're not going to have to. You don't have to win 100% of the caucus. You don't even have to win a majority usually. But you can make stuff bipartisan with just a handful of folks. But those folks are not going to get yanked around, and they're not going to get peanuts. They want a real conversation and real work together. I mean, Star is out there. I
Well,
don't think for a minute that if there was a real workable solution on the transportation package that there wouldn't have been a deal because Starr has worked on those things before. It's not like he is a hard right guy. And so if he's out there saying there was space for a deal and they didn't want it and I'm going to go collect signatures and basically, I mean, he's going to make his life with this stuff a lot harder. Obviously, it's a lot going to be a lot tougher for him in the building with a lot of these guys who are going to be super annoyed that he's doing this, but he's doing it because it's like this is better for Oregon. This is the right policy. And I think that's the thing that Democrats need to just like, yeah, you think because you're a blue state and you're a trifecta that you get to own everything. And that's just not the way this works because we're all accountable to the voters at the end of the day. And the voters are not with you on this. So if you want Republicans to go out there and carry the water, actually give us something that's worth carrying. And they just won't give. Democrats refuse to give because they think it's surrender. And then they go out and shut down the federal government and go, why won't the Republicans negotiate with us? And it's like, well, it's pot kettle. That's why you don't hear a lot about the shutdown, by the way, from Democrats in Oregon. They don't talk about it very much. They attack Trump, but they won't talk about the shutdown or anything else because, oh, yeah, there was a walkout. That's right. And they used all the same talking points the Republicans are using now.
same with gerrymandering conversations. I always kind of
Totally.
like, where are the Democrats going to start chattering about this anytime Texas and California are battling back and forth? I mean, I heard
Zip.
that the Cliff Bence's district in land is the same size as the state of Washington.
That's
Like it's
crazy.
completely unreasonable to have somebody to represent that big of landmass if you really want them to truly be representative. And like to your point earlier, they're going to try to gerrymander him out. Yeah, for good friggin' luck. I think they figured out we're just going to put all the Republicans in one district, and that's the best we can do.
Yeah,
Um,
I think so. Pretty crazy stuff.
I know you guys probably got to wrap.
Well,
Yeah,
this has been a lot of fun.
it's been fun. Yeah, it's been good, Dan. It's been fun to
Th-
have you on. We'll
by
definitely
the way,
do
I don't
that.
think
Yeah.
we ever introduced him. We have Dan Mason, who is the
I
national
said it.
committeeman from the Oregon Republican. You said Dan and you said, but I don't know if we
I think
ever
I
said his
said
last name.
Mason, didn't I?
Did
Yeah.
you? Maybe? I don't know. We're obviously very professional, very polished podcast hosts who are very
Beautiful,
good at
beautiful
doing
thing.
this. Maybe we'll get better after 100 episodes. I don't know.
We'll
Probably
put your
not.
name in the title, and that way
There
people,
you go.
and they'll
I'm
see.
good. No, it is fun. It's fun chatting about ideas, sharing stories, and seeing how we can make Oregon better, despite the hardcore opposition to what we're doing here.
To normalcy. Yeah. It's that's all we want, man. Like if we were normal, Republicans would be in control. That's the problem. So
Or at least competitive or
yeah,
something. But right now,
we'll
super
see.
minority.
Lots to come. So hey, what else are you doing? Are you doing anything else besides, throwing a Reagan dinner and going to fancy parties in DC? Like what else are you up to?
No, so I do serve on the election integrity committee for the RNC.
Okay.
So I constantly, emphasize our issues, but also, frankly, to bringing back, best practices in some of these states. And there's a lot of intricacies, I think, to what's taken place.
Okay.
Obviously, we're trying to make the Oregon Republican Party a functional organization that is competitive on all levels. I have a lot of conversations with candidates, potential candidates. I think I operate as like a funnel, information wise, to different people. If they can't get to Cliff Bence and I think our RNC folks, we have access to the White House communications folks, and we highlight Oregon issues. We'll see if it plays this week or next week, but Full Measure with Cheryl Atkinson. She came out and her crew came out, and I got to participate in some interviews with that
Oh, nice.
on the city of Portland issues. I also serve on the board for Multifamily Northwest, so we deal with a lot of property rights, housing, the tenant landlord, law changes. Tenant advocates are trying to roll your property rights on so many different fronts that blow your mind. So battling on that. Yeah, no, there's a variety of things. So I came off the Vietnam War Memorial Board and the Ethics Commission in the last 6 months with those wrapping up. So I freed up a little bit of time with two kids and a job and all the other stuff.
Yeah, right. No, we'll definitely we'll have to have you talk. We'll have to do a housing one too, and have you. I forgot you were on the board of Multifamily Northwest because we had some very interesting discussions. Senator Anderson and I went down and did a roundtable with Senator Pham and 82nd and Division and talked to basically, multifamily housing developers. And it was very interesting. And they talked a lot about why they're not building in Portland.
Oh,
And it has everything to do with horrible regulations.
so there's a and I get and we so there's that aspect and the investment that's being driven off. There's the aspect of these property communities, these apartment communities being forced to take in all these quote
Yeah.
unquote house population of homelessness that are making the properties more dangerous, making them a challenge to operate because the tenant advocates are rolling property owners on how you can handle those to be able to evict because they got to keep them housed. So they're making everything more dangerous while rolling back the rules. And a lot of these people they're either drug addicted, mentally ill. They don't want to follow the rules and the laws. And so it's making the communities in general more dangerous across the board. So yeah, there's a variety of issues. That's the front. That's the front where people need to get in front of and pay attention to is the property rights, housing issues in the Oregon legislature. That is the battle that's impacting all of our communities on a different level for sure.
Oh, geez.
Watch the House and Senate housing committees.
Yeah, we'll see you next week. All right. Thanks, Dan.
Yep. Thanks, guys. Have a good night.